Good morning, it's April 1st, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Last week I mentioned that I would talk about the record number of members of Congress leaving. Some are just retiring, but many more are just tired of what Congress has become, and they decide they have had enough, and out the door they go. When I first went to Washington, D.C. in 1977 to work for Senator Warren Hatch, our office was on the 6th floor of the Senate Dirksen building. Across the hall was a committee staff for a Democratic member of the Senate. Now we got to know these people and became friends with them. We would have lunch together. We would talk about what was going on in our lives and basically formed strong friendships. We differed politically, but it did not impact our personal interaction with people we came to know. Similarly, my boss at the time, Senator Hatch, came to the Senate as a Reagan supporter and was characterized as a bomb thrower, right-winger. But 4 years later, Ronald Reagan became the President of the United States, and Senator Hatch became the chairman of the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee. His ranking member was Senator Ted Kennedy, the ultra-liberal from Massachusetts. Well, now Hatch had the responsibility of writing the bills for the committee, holding hearings, and managing the bills on the floor. That forced him to forge a personal relationship with Kennedy, and they worked together to negotiate some major legislation. If you ever taken a generic drug, it was their work in passing the Hatch-Waxman amendments to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and it basically created a generic drug industry that's saving patients trillions of dollars. They worked together to pass the Orphan Drug Act that incentivized companies to research drugs for rare diseases. They differed politically but learned to work together on issues. And I could give you a whole long list of other bills they passed. The same was said of Ronald Reagan, who learned to communicate and work with Democratic Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill. But today, things have become so highly partisan that it seems that members don't talk to each other, and staff members don't talk to those on the other side. And people have asked me when I thought this hyper-partisanship began. I look back to the year 2000. George W. Bush defeated Vice President Al Gore in the 2000 presidential election. It was a very close election and came down to the state of Florida. There was a great deal of controversy, but in the end, George W. Bush was declared the winner. Democrats were infuriated. They claimed that Bush had somehow stole the election from Al Gore. They ignored that every recount, and there were multiple ones of them, showed that Bush won the state of Florida by a narrow margin. But that did not stop many members of the House, Democrats, voting not to certify George W. Bush as the next president. They were the election deniers of their time. Over in the White House, the staff members who thought they would keep their jobs with Al Gore took all the W's off the keyboards for the computers. Well, since that time, I believe that collegiality and friendship across partisan lines has declined greatly. It has led to great frustration by many men and women on both sides of the aisle that came to Congress believing they could make a difference. But you have factions on both the right and the left that are not interested in working with anyone that does not share their radical beliefs. They've adopted a mindset of my way or the highway. This year, over 50 members of Congress have called it quits. Some are quitting mid-Congress, refusing to even serve out the rest of their term. And we saw this last month with Congressman Ken Buck, a Republican from Colorado, and Mike Gallagher, Republican from Wisconsin. Mike Gallagher was viewed as a rising star in the Republican House. He's a former Marine who grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He served in the Congress since 2017 and was named the chair of a new House committee dedicated to countering the threat from China. He led a successful effort to ban TikTok if the Chinese-based owner did not sell its stake in the company. But Gallagher would not toe the line with the far right of his party, and Trump supporters were on the attack. They view anyone that would not totally support Trump as the enemy. Ken Buck is another example of someone who got tired of the bickering and failures to get anything done. In an interview, he said, quote, "We've taken impeachment and made it a social media issue as opposed to a constitutional concept. This place keeps going downhill and I don't need to spend any more time here," end quote. He's right. The impeachment of Donald Trump was pure politics. I think what Trump did was ill-advised in both cases, but did not rise to the level of impeachment. And that effort was just Democrats playing politics. So the Republicans have followed suit, and they've impeached Homeland Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and are working on impeaching Joe Biden. Well, Buck was considered a very conservative member, but criticized fellow Republicans for echoing Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen from him. And as I said, the number of members leaving Congress is over 50, and many of them from districts where they're assured re-election. And there's still time for that number to grow. Many listening to this will say, "Good riddance, don't let the door hit you on the way out." Most of those saying that are extremely partisan on their side. Look at how liberal Democrats demanded that senators like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema be thrown out of the Democratic caucus simply because they would not toe the line and support everything Biden proposed. And I mentioned Ken Buck quitting, and he was a member of the far-right Freedom Caucus, but differed with them on some key issues, so they expelled him from their tight-knit group. So what's the solution to this problem? In my opinion, it's up to the voters. And I will use Marjorie Taylor Greene as an example. She's the firebrand congresswoman from Georgia's 14th district. It's a solidly Republican district. And this allows her the ability to conduct her antics in public without any fear of being held accountable within her district. She's now threatening to file a motion to vacate the chair against Speaker Mike Johnson. Even many of her Republican colleagues are tired of her antics. Here's what I would suggest. Every member of the Progressive Caucus and every member of the Freedom Caucus should have to face a very difficult primary. If the voters decide to let them know they're tired of people who won't talk to anybody else but their own kind, are not willing to vote on issues that are important to the country, then they're tired of them being in Congress. Just think what would happen if every one of the Progressive Caucus and Freedom Caucus failed to win re-election. It would send a clear signal to everybody else in Congress. They better start talking to each other, and they better start working with each other to solve the nation's problems, or they'll be on their way out as well. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.